Lions and tigers and baboons. Oh my. In the early years of Kings Island, visitors could see more than 300 animals at the old Lion Country Safari and sometimes hear them roaming Warren County after they escape from the 100-acre wildlife preserve. Hello, everybody. Alongside Don Helbig, I'm Ryan Sir, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Topics is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans because that's who we are and that's who we care about.
Yeah, this is such an odd story, and it's so odd to think about, but also in the same way, it feels like it was yesterday. I want to start this off because I want to start off with the interactivity. I want you to comment on the YouTube video if you're watching on YouTube or tweet at us at tower_topics. Do you remember? Did you do Lion Country Safari? Did you know that Kings Island essentially had a zoo? Like, tell us where you are in that because I feel like a lot of people may not know that, and it's almost legendary. But it opened in 1974, and that was the park's third year. Um, it was space used today by Flight of Fear, Orion, and Banshee. Um, was around for 20 years, 15 million riders. Don, how often did you do it? It was an upcharge, right?
Yeah, well, it was actually more than 15 million riders. They stopped calculating it,
Br-
for the last several years of it. But yeah, I did. I mean, it was a really big deal in 1974 when it was introduced. It really enhanced your visit there to be able to get the zoo experience on top of all the other the rides and the shows. So we would do it every visit.
Yeah. Now it did not open with the park in '74, thus making it the third year instead of the second year, right? Because if Kings Island opened in '72,
Yeah, 74, you got 72, 73, 74. So 74,
it's
third
third
year.
year. Okay, I see what you mean by that. But yeah, so it was a 2 mile long ride through 100 acres of animal habitats. This included animals from Africa, North America, and Asia. The attraction was originally included with park admission, but was later made available for a nominal upcharge. Imagine trying to do that
Yeah,
today.
it was yeah. But I mean, no, but it was very minimal. With what you had to pay. It was maybe 50 cents, and then it became like $1.35, I think, or something like that near the end. Some other people who maybe listening to that experience that are perhaps you worked the attraction might know the exact price of it, but it was fun and it was something that you were inside the car and it was air conditioned, so in the middle of July or August, it was kind of nice to maybe get out of the heat for a few minutes and take that journey. The voiceover. So it had a story as you were going through, and they described all the different animals, and that you would see in that was done by a very popular Cincinnati TV weatherman from WKRC. His name was Ira Joe Fisher. He
Hmm.
was known for writing backwards, but he narrated the experience. So that was kind of cool too, to have that local tie-in narrating the experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was kind of unlike other Lion Country Safari attractions because normally, for those who don't know, you drive your own car through the safari attractions. There's actually a really big one up by Cedar Point if you ever go up there. But Kings Island had a 2 mile long monorail. It was originally identified as Kenya Safari. It was accessible from the new park area, which today is known as Action Zone. Despite using the name monorail, though, throughout the attraction's existence, it actually ran on two parallel rails, and therefore technically not a monorail because, fun fact, mono means one.
Semantics,
Yeah.
semantics. There. No, I called it the monorail ride, and I thought it felt like you were in a monorail. But they had the elephants, the rhinoceros, giraffes, lions, hippopotamuses, ostriches, zebras, antelopes. Riding the racer as often as I did back then in the '80s. The blue side now. You could look out and you would see the giraffes and the elephants and that. I mean, it was kind of cool while you're waiting to ride the ride. You could be entertained by the animals.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it still kind of strikes me to think there was a full. I mean, like it'd be one thing if it just had animals, but they had a full-fledged freaking zoo with elephants. I mean, come on. But anyway,
Oh, it was full on.
yeah, yeah, it was full on, and it was separated into three large sections: the Umfalzi Reserve, which was large animals; Serengeti Plains, which was lions; and Savo Park, which was grazing animals. The sections were divided by fences, but the fences were like hidden by trees and hills. And this is years before Disney did it at Animal Kingdom.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was very, very well done when you were riding. I'm gonna use the word I want to use, monorail. When you were riding it, uh, you never saw, all the fences and things. It just, you had the trees, and they would have, look really like you were out in Africa or something, the way they had it set up, and it was amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So, it went through a massive renovation in 1976, reseeded all the grassy areas and cleared a bunch of the underbrush. 13 tigers and 50 olive baboons were planned to be added, but the baboons escaped before the park opened for the season. After rounding up all the baboons, the park elected not to host them. Well, they're kicked out of the park now.
There was, they knew how to get out of the cage. I remember the
Mhm.
park's publicist at the time, Ruth Voss. She told me the story that they saw them going down 71.
Yes.
Toward Warren County. The baboons were everywhere. They gathered them all up, but they had to send them back. And then there was the empty cage because it was marketed as to come see these baboons this year. So they put signage out there that just said, "Here, is where the baboons made monkeys out of us would have gone."
Yeah, I if I recall, I think Bill Mefford said that he was part of PR when that happened. And I remember him describing how much fun they had, like the media played along with it because the baboons weren't dangerous. They weren't gonna, attack anybody or anything like that. But people would just be driving down the roads in Mason and you would see baboons
There they
swinging
are.
from tree to tree in their neighborhood. So what an opportunity.
Very intelligent animals, but they didn't you couldn't keep them locked because they could figure out how to get out, like how to unlock it and everything. So, yeah, it was a good idea to bring them in, but it just didn't work in that kind of setting.
Yeah, they should have bribed them. But anyway, the entrance, and I do recall this was near kind of where like Drop Tower is now. And we shouldn't have,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Sorry, go ahead with your thought, Don.
No, no, yeah, I mean, it's right there, right when you go up tower.
Yeah, yeah, so that whole corner was dedicated to, where you go in, and it's you start going towards where the bat is now and so on, but, Taft Broadcasting, who built Kings Island, also opened a similar attraction at its sister park, Kings Dominion, near Richmond, Virginia, and what's funny is I did fireworks at, Kings Dominion several years ago. I've told anecdotes about that, but their complex behind the park where their Lion Country Safari was is huge. There's still fences everywhere and old automated I mean, the gates don't work or anything, but old automated gates, it's just huge. Anyway,
Yeah, but sustaining the ride, I mean, there's a lot of electrical connections, along the monorail track. That posed a little bit of problems for them. The animals would get close to the track, they would jump the track. I remember one time I rode, and I think there was like a zebra just kind of laid down on the track, and we sat there for 30 minutes waiting for it to get up and move. So you'd have things like that would happen. Sometimes they would kick up mud on it. You know, when it rained a lot, there'd be some flooding issues back there. It had a lot of downtime, and that was a real thorn to the park.
yeah. Was so I remember when I wrote it, this was the first time I wrote it, and I wrote it twice, and I'm sure we'll get into that, but I remember stopping for probably 5 minutes because there was an animal on the track. Was there ever a situation where, like, they had to evacuate it or anything? Can you like, what would you do?
No, no, I never. Well, I'm sure there might have been that time where they did have to evacuate, and they probably brought out, depending on what part of it you were in. If you were there with the lions and the tigers, and that obviously you're not going to get out. But I just remember, occasionally having those delays, just when the animals would, just stand there on the track, or they would decide to lay down on it or something. Um, but if I didn't have, I wasn't into taking pictures in that back then. I really wish that I had have been because there would have been some terrific photo opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, you can search around the internet, and a lot of them kinda hit me in the feels because I was young enough to the point where I do remember doing it, I remember flashes of it, but also if I see photos, especially obviously, like, an open grassy area is not gonna spark anything, but I remember, like, maybe, like, a small man-made pond at the very beginning where they had, like, pelicans or something, or
Hmm.
okay, but I saw a picture of that, and I was like, "I've been there before," so it's very interesting, but anyway, as with all these things we talk about and get me bummed out, all good things must come to an end, so, um, with
I think what happened with this was the repeatability of it. You put in a new roller coaster. Guests are going to ride that every year. Look at the Beast. Here it is going to be 45 this year, and people still coming from all over the world to ride it, and they've ridden it before. But with something like this, you do it two, three, four times, but you're not going to, keep doing it. You've done it. So that was one of the problems with it, was just that it was something that guests were going to repeat every single, year that they went to the park, or if you had pass holders that went out back in this time, if you went 5 times a year, that was a lot for a pass holder, but they weren't going to do it every single visit. So that was one of the things with it, that it just had declining ridership. I guess we'll call it ridership on that, just because it wasn't repeatable. You'd seen it, you did it, sort of like Dinosaurs Alive was.
Yeah, yeah, completely understand that. Probably the other factor is, yeah, and I feel like you kind of tiptoed around this to be fair, but with the cost of running something like that, they could probably build a new
Cost,
coaster
yes.
every year, especially in today's world. There's no way. And like I imagine that a lot of these safaris and stuff often are not for profit. I know there's like one at Six Flags New Jersey and all that stuff, but it's got to be very difficult between housing these animals, taking care of them, the incredible amount of staff, the specialists, the veterinarians, the upkeep of the monorail. It'll be very difficult to justify that for very long. So I'm surprised it lasted as long as it did. Wasn't it a third party at first?
It was managed by, yeah, like a third party was managing it and that. So, but you're right. I mean, cost was definitely a strong consideration when it was time to remove it, and that's one of the reasons why they had to start charging for it. It wasn't something that they could do for free forever, and like I said, all good things come to an end, and it was kind of strange when it went away. You didn't really notice it wasn't there unless it was something that you did a lot.
Yeah. I remember hearing the news that it was going away and thinking, "Oh," like, it didn't really phase me. Um, but, so it sounds like you did it several times. I very distinctly remember doing it twice. I did it on my first visit to Kings Island, which I think it was in 1992. And then and specifically my aunt took us there and she told us ahead of time, we're going to do this monorail because it's air conditioned. So it's kind of funny you mentioned that at the beginning of the show that it ran the AC, but that was a time when an animal stopped on the track and we had to sit there for a while. So that is one of my memories from it. And
Yeah, you didn't have behind the scene tours of the racer back then, so there weren't all the coaster events. So that was an opportunity for me too, riding it, to kind of go along the side of the racer and kind of take that behind the scene tour a little bit of the ride,
yeah, and
see it from an angle that I couldn't from the park side.
yeah, the other time I rode it, I'm pretty sure I rode it this time, and I'll have to check because maybe it didn't even exist by this time, but I haven't really checked when this was. But my class went on a field trip to Kings Island, and I remember we all saw we all got like the handout for the field trip, and we're like, we're going to Kings Island, and then it said like there will be no rides. It was all educational, so we went to like.
Oh, we did that too.
Did you? So I
Yeah, we
remember
had that too, and yeah,
we did a bird show in the Timberwolf. We saw a bird show in the Timberwolf. That was my first time ever in the Timberwolf. And then I'm pretty sure we rode the Lion Country Safari. We had to have. What else would we do there all day?
yeah, yeah. When I was in school, we did. I want to say I was like maybe fifth grade, sixth grade. We did the attraction. Went through it, saw all the animals and that, and then they took us into the show place, and they had some of the employees from the safari that came over and talked about just kind of the day to day, taking care of the animals, answered any questions. And I'm sitting there looking from the show from show play. I'm looking over at the racer and the different rides and stuff, not paying a whole lot of attention. Then we get back to school and there's a quiz on it.
Of course. Another memory that I had from that field trip is we saw Saltwater Circus. That's another
Yeah,
episode we can do because I lightly remember that. And I remember actually talking to the trainer, which is an anecdote I will tell whenever we do that episode. But see, Kings Island can be educational. You know?
it can be. I actually, another school trip was going to see Dinah Shore. She spoke to a group there too. So Kings Island, you're right. I mean, all these school groups and that, very educational. I just wish rides had been a part of that,
Mhm.
like they are today for a lot of these school groups, but it wasn't the case back then for us.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, let's move on.
Listener
Yeah,
question,
listener
yeah,
question. Uh,
from JC Evans.
yeah.
JC Evans, this is for you, Ryan. What do you think is going to be the next big coaster investment for the park?
I think by the time the park puts in another big investment, we'll have like a hovercraft or something. No, totally kidding. I obviously we get asked this a lot. The vortex plot is a definite eyesore. You and I have talked both on and off camera about how it's not necessarily a situation where the park needs another coaster right now, but they do need something for that spot. Like, I will stand firm on that because it looks like it's like missing a tooth, you know? Um, in that spot, there's so many options out there. If you're gonna ask me what I want, I've expressed it a lot. Some sort of like Maverick style ride or a mock extreme spinner. Realistically, it's gonna be a dive coaster. They're not gonna get off the B&M hype. It's gonna be a dive coaster. Now, could be a cool one. I've heard rumors that like it would dive down kind of like where that Batwing loop was for the vortex and come back up where the current 3 point challenge is. Like so it'll go under the midway. That could be neat. What do you think, Don? What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
you know, I think JC. I think for the next big coaster investment in terms of dollars and whatever it's going to be or whatever, I think it's going to be a while, like Ryan mentioned. You have this, you know, between Six Flags and Cedar Fair at the minute. There's not going to be a lot of cash, money to go out and be putting in 25, 30, 40 million roller coasters over the next few years. When that does happen, I agree. It'll likely be that vortex area. I feel strongly too that, and I could be wrong about this, but I feel strongly that it would be a dive coaster. I look at what Stony Park's doing with their dive coaster. I think something like that would be the perfect fit uh, for that area. I think with the topography and everything there, you can make it pretty cool. But I think it's going to be a little while. I don't think you're going to see something in the next, year or two. I think it's going to be down the road a little bit, and I think everyone has to be patient. Let the merger play out if it closes, and then take it from there. But you're not going to see anything in the foreseeable future.
Plus, they don't need a coaster, they need a dark ride. We've had that
Oh
discussion.
yeah, we've been on you and I've been on that train for a long time.
Yeah, they need to I mean, I already exposed how to win Boo Basters at Boo Hill every single time in my last in our last episode. So you'll have to go back and
Yeah, I was
listen to that.
surprised you gave that away.
It was
I'm
funny. It
surprised
was
you gave.
funny because I almost like I felt so I didn't feel dirty about it. I felt like I was exposing myself because what if I play against one of our listeners for money someday? And then I just gave away my secret. But then I decided to go all in. So I even put on the social media. I made the title of the episode the legacy of Firehawk and how to win Boo Blasters every time or something like that. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah, let's ask our listeners something too. Again, reply to us on our X. It's tower_topics, and let us know the kind of stories that you want to hear. We've done a lot the history of the park, some of the former rides. We've done some current rides, but what are some of the topics, some of the stories that you want, or maybe some of the guests you want us to have on? There's a laundry list of guests that I've reached out to some of them and kind of planned that, but want to wait a little bit closer to the start of the season. So it kind of maybe who we're talking to maybe ties in a little bit more to what we're talking about. But this is a show for you, like we talk about at the beginning. It's a show by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans. What do you want to hear? I mean, you're taking the time to listen to us. Let us know.
Yeah, yeah. So as Don mentioned, we want to make the show around you. So either tweet at us at tower_topics, or a lot of people have been leaving comments on the YouTube video, and I don't want to discourage people from that. So feel free to do that as well. But what kind of stories do you want to hear? Do you want to hear about old defunct rides? Because I imagine with a bunch of the age groups of the listeners, there's probably a bunch that I got to ride that they didn't, and even more so with you, Don, because you're much older than me. But do you want to hear defunct rides, shows, events, people? Do you want us to do some fan fiction? We can do that. That would be really stupid, but whatever, your show. But yeah, comment on this video down down there or tweet at us at attraction or sorry at tower_topics. Sorry, we do two podcasts. Yeah, Don, any final thoughts?
Soon to be three.
Oh my gosh.
Uh, no, I think fun episode, and I really enjoy going back in time and talking about some of these different attractions the park doesn't have anymore. I've got just a treasure trove of memories, and it rekindles that, and it's just fun.
Yeah, same thing here. I particularly enjoy the defunct ride ones because either I get to learn something about it because a lot of what I know is like the rumor and innuendo or just stories I've heard and stuff. And you were there for a lot of it, so I get to hear, like, facts, but also for Firehawk and Wild Animal Habitat, it's a walk down memory lane, because I want to get this stuff recorded before I forget all of it. Every time I learn something new, I forget something I already knew. So I can't afford to be learning about all these
Yeah.
new rides, like the Soapbox Racer. I completely forgot about Deerspin Kaggers. I don't even know what that is anymore. You know, totally kidding. All right, I'm Ryan Sir, along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.